Number 2 is better balance and counterbalance for AoE and spam, and I know we already have a lot of decent answers for these things, and honestly just the best way to deal with AoEs is to stay away from them, but there are certain weapons and items that are way too spammable, like the insect swarm miracle is just obnoxious, and blood pots basically do the same thing, but they're not as bad because they don't slowly float toward you and chase you if you run in a circle and stuff like that. I'm not asking for an end-all be-all of items that will help us deal with certain annoying effects, but I would really appreciate if there were at least better answers than what we currently have for the big issues in the game. Spells are pretty well handled. Those have enough counters between carry and retaliation, the Erdtree's Great Shield and stuff like that, that you can kinda sorta handle them. And miracles can mostly be handled in the same regard. But once you start looking just at the weapons, and especially the AoE spammable weapons, that's when you really start getting into some danger. If you have people who are using Waves of Darkness plus Giant's Flame Take Thee plus, I don't know, what's that one? It's like Holy Ground or something like that the Erdtree avatars use, you know, the big spammy lightning spray. It's not actually lightning, it's just balls of light that float in the air. Either way, if you find a team that's really AoE spammy, basically all you can do is run from them, and that is not fun at all. There needs to be some kind of solution or way to deal with it that doesn't eat up my FP like Quick Step and Bloodhound Step do, and don't leave me wide open if I accidentally mess up, like with the Erdtree's Great Shield or something like that. There needs to be more actual counterbalance. In Dark Souls 3, parrying was a really good answer for a lot of weapons and weapon arts, and it still kind of is, but the problem is it feels much weaker now, and that's entirely exacerbated by things like 0 damage backstabs and crits, and there are just a lot of problems in terms of regular balancing right now. If we're going to stick with the high damage for everything kind of deal that we've been doing for Elden Ring, I think that the number one thing that needs to happen in terms of better balance is every build needs to be able to reach a certain damage threshold and not be put out too hard by reaching that threshold. So I know you're probably like, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, look at something like the Bolt of Gransax. If you're running a 60 dex build, you can hit for around 1900, which can one-shot a lot of people unless they've really got that 60 vigor, and you know, they're pushing it with some other stuff. And then there are things like Waves of Darkness or the Elden Stars, or what's that one really annoying spell that's not Stars of Ruin anymore? It's like the step down from Stars of Ruin that chase you and are really obnoxious. Basically anything that can continuously chip, stuff like that, are all fine if we want to keep the high damage meta of Elden Ring and make fights last much less time. But the problem is that weapons don't feel like they're useful when weapon arts just overpower them every single time. There are certain weapons that are very useful, especially ones that have true combos, like the, not Bloodhound Knight, like the Banished Knight Greatsword. Certain weapons are incredibly useful and can actually make a huge difference just because they've got some kind of true combo. But the problem is, if they've got a buddy in the back spamming a big heavy weapon art, then you might still just get hit by it anyway, even if you're playing perfectly. Or if they've got a blue that spawns in, then you're absolutely screwed. Or, you know, anything can happen to cause the battle to change its flow, and you really don't want to be in the 1v3 situation when you're doing fine and then now all of a sudden you have no HP. Part of me even thinks that this might be Elden Ring and FromSoft's idea of a way to try and deal with invaders who are already incredibly overpowered, especially invaders who twink. If you don't know, twinking is when you take endgame gear and you fight at a low level with it. So let's say you go through the game at level 1, and then you take weapons from the end game, like Rivers of Blood or something like that, and you go fight other characters who are level 5 or something like that. You're fighting them on the first step in Limgrave. That's twinking. That stuff's not okay, but it'll always be a part of the Souls series as long as it's allowed, and I just honestly don't think that the high damage threshold is a way of dealing with that that's effective, because the lower your player level, the less effective you become.